past couple years, I've noticed a kind of antisocial behavior being normalized within Gen Z. By the way, when I say antisocial, I mean like anti-socializing, not like antisocial disorder, which is like a different thing psychologically. But it seems like Gen Z really just doesn't want to talk to anybody. And I think it's very interesting. Another disclaimer, I guess. As someone who's dealt with depression and anxiety, who has been in and out of therapy for mental health issues, I totally understand and relate to a lot of the things that people say around these sort of antisocial behaviors, but I wanted to really just look at all these different trends and behaviors from a zoomed out sort of lens and observe all of these moving parts through a critical lens. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not here to tell you what to do, what not to do, how to feel, not to feel. Your feelings are valid. I know what it's like to be depressed. I know what it's like to be anxious. So I just wanted to put that out there, okay? And I feel like I should share that just so you guys know I'm not talking out of my ass. Don't, understand the feelings that I'll be discussing. Anyways, in this video, we're going to be talking about bed rotting and the lack of party and club culture. Should cashiers say hello? All that fun stuff. So I'm just going to get right into it because there is a lot to cover here. So bed rotting is a term that was popularized on TikTok by Gen Z that describes the act of staying in bed for a prolonged period of time while usually binge watching a TV show or a movie, snacking, doom scrolling, etc. It is sometimes framed as a form of self-care or intentional rest to remedy the exhaustion from school or work or just the general demands of everyday life that can be very tiring. Essentially, it's rest, but like a step above that, just a notch or two more than rest. Resting is an essential part of the human experience, and the replenishing of energy by staying in bed or being a couch potato for a couple of days over the weekend is commonly practiced and encouraged. In a society that glorifies the grind and sleeping when you're dead, where resting for some people is met with shame and guilt, this sort of dramatic, tongue-in-cheek, humorous term can kind of alleviate that pressure and normalize the assertion of intentional rest. However, to me, the term bed rotting, I think that term emphasis on rot implies a deeper sedentary state that goes beyond a place of like healthy rest, but more of a place of decomposition. Like when you think of the word rot, especially like associating it with a living organism that is the human body, like that's not a good thing, right? Although I think resting isn't necessarily the same as bed rotting. I think sometimes people may use it interchangeably, because I think when you really peel back the layers of it and like look at it for what it is at its most basic meaning, bed rotting is like depression. Just stay with me, because to rest for a couple days is normal. To bed rot for a prolonged period of time, I'm talking days on end, even weeks, isn't really like healthy. You're in bed, you're isolated from the world, you're immobile. And if you find yourself in a place of bed rotting where you can't get out of bed, you don't have the energy, you feel like you can't move, you're like paralyzed, I would maybe implore you to speak to a professional. Maybe it's a chronic exhaustion sort of disorder situation, or maybe it's a psychological issue. Before we get on with the rest of the video, I wanted to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Pi. Pi is a Chrome extension that you can download on pi.org/vanity. It's free and super easy to download. Pi offers a really efficient ad blocker that gets rid of any unwanted ads and also frees up storage on your computer. You can also choose to opt into ads and earn rewards for each ad that you watch. Another feature that I really enjoy about Pi is the shopping feature. So if you're someone like me who likes to do a lot of online shopping, this could be super useful for you. Pi offers coupons that are automatically applied to items in your cart, and you can also earn cash back. As someone who likes to shop online a lot, I'm definitely always scouring for coupons and deals, so this makes my online shopping experience so much easier and so much simpler, and I'm saving so much money because it really does add up. So if you're interested in having an easier shopping experience and not being bombarded with ads with every website that you click on, then check out pi.org/vanity and download the Pi extension on your Chrome browser. Link is also in my description. Thank you again to Pi for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to the scheduled program. programming. My experience, when I'm in a place of bed rotting for more than like a day or two, I feel like after a while it starts to get uncomfortable, right? Like, because then you get into this space of like, I want to get out of bed, I should get out of bed, but I can't. And that's not a comfortable feeling. And to me, it doesn't feel restful. If anything, it's more exhausting, or kind of continues the cycle or prolongs the symptoms of depression. You're not spending time with friends and family. You're not participating in hobbies. You're not doing things that are energizing, that can be very energizing and nourishing to yourself. You're just like stuck. I think it's important to address the obvious here, that Gen Z statistically is more prone to anxiety and depression and mental health issues in general. Now, it's hard to say if that's because we literally are more depressed as a generation, or if it's because we are more open to therapy and it's become a lot more normalized in our society, so more people are seeking it out and getting diagnosed. But at the same time, life is kind of harder now, it seems like, from all different corners. I mean, the economy sucks. Most of us don't know if we'll ever be able to buy a house or have children. The environment is crumbling beneath our feet. We don't know if we'll have a roof over our heads or a planet to even walk on. Politically, things are a mess. So it's not surprising to me that our generation that is very aware of these issues feels that immense pressure and heaviness of the world. And I think we all kind of collectively experience some sort of anxiety or depression at some point in our lives. And then there's the whole social media thing, which I've spoken ad nauseum about on this channel. Social media, bad for a brain. You know the vibes. Taking a depression nap here and there is totally fine. I do it all the time. Well, not all the time, but I be doing it. It can be helpful. Again, rest is helpful and important. And sometimes you just need a few days to like just hole up and like not talk to anybody. But if we're doing this all the time, every day, bed rotting can really affect your health overall. For one, it can affect your sleep. When people lounge in bed, their brains may associate their bed with things other than sleep, leading to sleep disruption, she said. Simply put, your physical body might be confused at night and won't know if you're trying to fall asleep or bed rot, explained DeAngelis. Like I said, bed rotting can actually, I think, increase symptoms of depression or prolong them when you really like sit and fester in it. And that's not to say you shouldn't sit with your feelings. You definitely should. Sit in it, live in it, be in it. Really just let it flow through you. And sometimes it takes a while, but when we engage in bed rotting, we are more likely to stay in the mindset we were in before bed rotting. In fact, engaging in fewer activities may only fuel a cycle of depression or anxiety, according to Hollingshead. Bed rotting could start off as self-care to rest, but then turn into fewer productive or enjoyable activities, more time on social media, more sleep issues, more social isolation, and lead to more depression, Hollingshead said. In order to break the cycle, being more active improves our mood and our motivation. Which is like, obviously, but when you're in it, when you're really in it, it's really hard to kind of break out of it sometimes. And even knowing that logically doesn't actually motivate you to break that cycle. In my experience, when I'm really depressed, the thing that motivates me the most to get out of it is not someone telling me like, oh, just get up, get out of bed, go for a walk. It's honestly just kind of feeling exhausted by the exhaustion or exhausted by the depression. And it's like, oh my God, I really can't feel like this anymore. Like, I do not want this for myself. And eventually I start to climb out of that hole. But I mean, it's hard. And it sometimes, like I said, it can take a while. I know this is something maybe people don't want to hear sometimes, but once I started like making the choice to move my body every day, my mental health improved a lot. Like, you don't have to like wake up at 5 a.m. and lift weights and all that. Like, I like doing that, but there's so many different ways to move your body, like just going for a walk. You know how many times I've been like sitting in my apartment and I'm like, life is pain. When will it end? Will I ever know joy? And then I go outside and I'm like, oh, maybe life is worth living after all. I think the hardest part is just getting yourself out the door in the first place, just like getting that one foot on the ground. But I never regret it once I do. In general, bed rotting aside, I believe if you have the privilege of being able-bodied and having the choice to get out of bed every single day, I implore you to take advantage of that and take care of yourself, take care of your body, take care of your mind, your soul, because you get one. And honestly, the way I view movement is kind of the way I view like hygiene, like brushing your teeth. You brush your teeth so you don't get cavities, so you don't have to pay a bajillion dollars in dental fees, speaking as an American, of course. And just because that's what you do to keep your body functioning and healthy, and movement is the same thing. Movement is such a great form of self-care. It's free, and taking care of your body may again prevent certain medical expenses popping up. Now, of course, health complications are not entirely self-inflicted. I know there's a lot of like blame and responsibility put on people for developing health issues, especially in this country that is the US of A, because it's way more convenient to blame the individual on their health shortcomings rather than addressing the fact that we don't have adequate health care and we are being fed poison every day. Anyways, all that to be said, I don't think we should be normalizing or glamorizing bed rotting / depression, because it can be a really dark reality for a lot of people when they're actually bed rotting. And the idea that there are people posting this and then there are other people, young people, seeing these videos and being like, oh, yes, that is okay. I can treat myself like this all the time and it's fine. It just doesn't really sit right with me. Again, every once in a while, every few days, totally normal, totally fine. Been there. I like laying in bed on the weekends, and just not doing shit. But if there is an actual mental health issue happening, that's not normal. And I don't think that's something that we should just embrace and be complicit in. I mean, some of y'all's rooms on TikTok are very scary to me. And that's kind of what I mean by after a while, the bed rotting isn't even fun. It's not even enjoyable because you're living in squalor, can't see the floor. And whenever I'm in that, I'm oh, and then you're thinking about cleaning your room, and the thought of cleaning your room is exhausting, and it's just this horrible cycle. And again, I'm not shaming anybody. I am not a pristine, neat Nancy. Is that a phrase? I don't know why I felt drawn to say that, but I can be a little disorganized sometimes, so I'm not judging, but it does do something to your mind when you literally can't see the floor. And if you're living in squalor, it's usually not a choice. It's not something that you're I just like this. It's a serious mental block or can indicate a mental health issue, but I don't think we need to take that and be I'm just a bed rotting rat girl. This is my aesthetic. It's not an aesthetic. It's not cute. I'm actually very concerned.
Bed rotting is a trend where you just kind of enjoy the time that you have in your bed. Younger generations are really embracing this concept of soft living and being able to
And I think some of this is also a response to the clean girl thing and how annoying that was, and being a clean girl seems so unattainable and unrealistic. So to kind of combat that, or to make ourselves feel better or feel like we have a valid lifestyle or identity that isn't the clean girl, we respond with the dirty rat girl. I drink Red Bull for breakfast and smoke cigarettes for lunch and just scroll on my phone all day, I think it's really interesting the way Gen Z seeks identity. I've talked about this a lot with the way we have these super micro niche trends, and we have all these aesthetics that are meant to embody a lifestyle and an identity. And I think we do the same thing with things like bed rotting or depression or anxiety or being an introvert or whatever. It's something that we can glom on to as a form of identity, and I get why people do it. With that, I do question what happens when you're no longer depressed. I can't speak for anybody. I can only speak for my own experiences. For me, depression kind of ebbs and flows and comes in and out of my life. So if I make depression my identity and then I go a year without being depressed, what happens then? Who am I? What is my identity? And I think a potential in identifying with depression or anxiety is that you almost want to cling to it because it's a part of you. It's who you are. That can make it even harder to prepare yourself to let that go and to kind of part ways with that depression. And because it's kind of a comfort, to identify with it. It's a comforting thing. But I think potentially it could be stifling. I'm of the mindset that you are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. In my own day-to-day life, I try my best not to attach myself to thoughts. Thoughts come and go. Sometimes you have a thought and you're huh, that was weird or interesting. Do I even believe that? not really, you know? So that's where I'm coming from. Anyways, I have a wonderful Substack article that I would love to share with you all today that really inspired me to make this video. Tell the Bees. I've mentioned Tell the Bees on this channel before. He's like my muse at this point, I guess. He said something very interesting about people's identification with this kind of behavior. Over the past few years, something has shifted in the perception of acceptable recreational behavior, or the way people talk about their hobbies. People are gleeful to admit they have no hobbies, no interests, no verve. Somehow, one of the main hobbies accepted by the masses is staying home, laying in bed, scrolling on their phones, and watching television. I think the lack of hobbies thing is very interesting because, you know, I think having a hobby or two in life can really like increase your quality of life, improve mental health. Social media has made it really easy to not have hobbies. The normalization of staying home has made it really easy to not like hobbies. Also, I remember a couple years ago where, like, I don't know, I think incels were saying like women don't have hobbies. So I wonder if people also kind of like sit in that and take pride in that as like, again, like a pushback to that kind of nonsensical criticism. But, you know, and Tell the Bees mentions this. It's interesting how so many people are like, the loneliness crisis, we're so alone, we have no friends, we can't find a date. But then people are also like, well, I'm just not going outside. I don't have hobbies. I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to doom scroll and bed rot. It's like, well, okay, we can't have both now, can we? It's like when people are like, your man isn't just going to fall out of the sky, or he's not going to fall from the ceiling of your apartment. Like, you gotta go out there. In this article, he also references Glam Demon 2004, who made a TikTok that was like, oh, like, do you have hobbies outside of media consumption? Can you spell pharaoh? And, you know, that TikTok didn't sit well with a lot of people and, like, unfortunately ran her off of TikTok because people just chose not to really understand what she was saying. I thought the video was funny. I got what she was saying, but, you know, people had their own discourse about it. Of course, like, okay, when she says media consumption, reading books is media consumption. I don't think she meant like, oh, if you read books and you have no hobbies and you're lame and boring and dumb. Like, I think she means like watching Netflix. But she had a point. Like, especially a skill-based hobby can do wonders for the mind, for the mental health, because it gives you like an increased sense of accomplishment and self-worth and maintains your cognitive abilities, which is something that I think as adults, when you're out of school, we like let fall to the wayside and kind of just don't nurture as much. Cognition is something you really want to hold on to, especially as you age. Case in point, learning things is fun. I think this tweet/Reddit post really explains it all very well. To the single people of Reddit, why are you single? I'm in a committed relationship with my bed. It understands me, supports my Netflix habits, and never argues about who finished the last of the ice cream. Reminded me of the woman who moved to New York and on her first day answered Netflix when asked her hobbies, and the guy so visibly got the ick right there, she went home and signed up for a pottery class. It saddens me that people are so afraid of like socializing, and I've seen this sort of anti-socializing behavior even in my own digital world. I remember a while ago I made a TikTok where I was like, oh, if you want to go out and meet people, because I know a lot of people struggle with that, if you just go to like a bar or even a park by yourself and just sit there and bring a book, especially because that can actually be an icebreaker for people, you'll be surprised by like people you meet. And I was bombarded with so many like close-minded comments where people were either like, well, you're pretty, so this doesn't work for me. I can't do this. It won't work for me. And I'm like, well, thank you. But also, I mean, just giving up before you try. And two, people are like, well, if someone's reading a book, then I'm not going to talk to them. And like, I understand that, but also you'd be surprised how many people don't actually think that way. And in the real world, like, it's really not that weird. Like, I don't know. People do it to me all the time, and I personally don't find it rude or offensive. If anything, I'm excited to talk about the book that I'm reading. So it's really not that like disruptive as people think it is. But again, like, that's the real world versus like the internet's perception of the real world, which is like so different. It's kind of annoying because like, yes, I understand that there's like pretty privilege and like, I don't mean to sound tone deaf, but at the same time, like, do you think people only want to speak to attractive people? Like, if anything, people say, oh, if you're attractive, people don't want to speak to you because they're intimidated by you. So it's like, which one is it? Either people don't want to speak to you because you're attractive, or people only speak to you because you're attractive. It's just like, just say you're too afraid to go out by yourself, all right? Damn. Embrace discomfort. I know it's easier said than done. You're basically afraid of the unknown, and so you try to create this reality that you can predict and then prevent. But in my experience, a lot of the times when I walk through the anxiety, I feel it and I go through it and do the thing that I'm scared of, the reality of the situation is far less scarier or detrimental than how I imagined it in my mind. Just some food for thought. Now let's get into the clubbing nightlife portion of this video. Because I've noticed a lot of discourse around the fact that Gen Z doesn't party, they don't go to the clubs, the club culture is dead, and I agree. Some tweets to set the mood. Again, big shout out to Tell the Bees for curating all the tweets in this video. Let me not argue with people who don't go out about partying. I will just sound like I'm bullying them over social dynamics they can't control, but also contribute to by not being able to hang, lol. That said, you nerds are being weird about your 30s again, and it's weird. Sorry. Weird how living life is associated with just stuff extroverts like to do. Introverts still like to go out and enjoy a nice time with their friends. You guys might have a different thing. That makes me laugh because it's so true. Like, leaving the house or living life doesn't always mean like going to the club or drinking. Like, you can like go to a pottery class or go to the movies or go to the park. Like, I don't know what that means. The worst part is they're not even having fun. They are just obsessed with checking their phones as well. And when they are not checking their phones, they are wishing they were. Have any of you ever been to a party in your life, or do you just live in your room developing bed sores? So I think the obvious kind of killer of club culture, like just mentioned, is the phones. People are really self-conscious when they're in public, especially at the club, a place where you're supposed to let loose and be free and dance like nobody's watching or dance like nobody's filming you, but most likely somebody might be. And like this constant sense of surveillance it really kills the vibe. I mean, even walking outside just in general puts you at risk of being in the background of a tourist photo or being filmed. Like, people have really got to get a grip on like filming strangers in public without their consent. I think that's really weird, especially in an environment like the club where maybe you might be doing something a little embarrassing because you're under the influence and you don't want people to see it. God forbid someone films you like picking your wedgie and they post it on TikTok and it goes viral. Like, I think that's kind of like this underlying fear a lot of people have. Or even better, you do something illegal and it's documented. It's just not very fun. And even surveillance aside, like, yeah, people are in the club on their phones or trying to get it on Snapchat, post it to their Instagram stories, and they're more caught up on the perception of clubbing and displaying it for others rather than actually doing the thing. Now, can I just say this? As a young person who lives in a big city, who's experienced nightlife, I am very familiar with all of these factors, but I do find it very irritating when people act like they're holier than thou because they don't club, they don't go out, kind of like the various tweets I just read to you. What I find interesting about the like self-righteousness that comes with being anti-clubbing is the fact that people assume going to a club means that you're like just doing absolutely like debaucherous behavior and you're binge drinking and you're doing and you're hooking up with people like that. You don't have to do any of those things when you go to the club. To me, when I think of going to the club, I think, oh, I'm gonna dance. I'm gonna dance tonight.
Get up here!
Look.
Let's dance! Let's dance!
And that's fun. I love dancing. And, you know, I guess not everyone feels comfortable dancing. And to that I say, fine. But you don't have to find like some like holier than thou hoity-toity way of saying, I can't dance to make yourself feel better or to like put yourself above others. Like, I just think it's kind of silly. And also, can I just say, people who are like that are even funnier to me post experiencing nightlife outside of the United States. If you hate clubbing, just like go to Berlin really quick and come back and then we can talk. Just casually book a trip to Germany, no big deal. No, but really though, like in Germany and Berlin, especially, I've only been to Berlin so I can't speak for the rest of the country. You don't even use your phone in the club. They take your phone or they put a sticker over your phone and it's just a accepted rule that you do not take out your phone and you actually can club, you can actually dance, you can party and you're there with everybody else and it's amazing. I think clubbing in the States just kind of sucks, especially with like the way the door works, especially New York. Like, it's so political, it's so expensive. Like, they're like $100 to walk in the door. Like, why? So I can sip on a $20 drink and stand in the corner bored out of my mind because nobody is dancing. Like, yeah, I'd rather stay home too. That being said, people in New York do dance, at least the clubs that I go to. The discourse around Brat Summer I thought was really interesting and was really representative of how Gen Z views clubbing. Because, you know, I think it was so popular at first because it did bring back that party girl vibe, that party culture, and it was embraced and it was fun, and we haven't had that in a really long time. But at the same time, because we haven't had that in such a long time, and some people in Gen Z have never gone out or have never gone out and enjoyed it, think that Charlie XCX is glamorizing snow use and being braggadocious and obnoxious with her flagrant display of having a good time. God forbid.
When Charlie XCX said 365 party girl, bumpin' that. Should we do a little key? Should we have a little line? What did you think she was talking about? Also, like, as an aside, nobody prepared me for how many people were going to be actively on as an adult. Like, I turned 18 and suddenly everybody I knew was doing like it was normal. I was talking to my dad about it and I was like, Dad, why didn't you warn me that as soon as I turned 18, everybody was going to start doing And he was like, people still do that? That's what people did when I was 18. He was like, I would have thought that they would have gotten into something way cooler than by now.
Getting mad at Charlie XCX for making a techno electronic dance album talking about partying and mentioning doing a little bump, doing a little key in her songs is like getting mad at Michael Phelps for swimming or something. Like, yes, that's what happens at parties. Not all parties, but like if you're going to raves, if you're going to places where techno is played, and yes, people, like, you know, I don't know. Like, I don't know why people are surprised by that. But again, I guess they're not going out. They're not going to the clubs. They're not going to the parties. The discourse around Brat Summer was fascinating. Someone tweeted that Charlie probably didn't party the way she claimed in her music, that she had a 15-step skincare routine and went to bed by 9. It was a joke, but it was also a failure of imagination. People couldn't believe that she was actually partying. People couldn't believe she was outside for real. When a video surfaced of her doing drugs at a rave, Gen Z melted down. How could she? I will point out that the most repeated lyric in 365 is bumping that. Another lyric asks, should we do a little key? Should we do a little line? So I made a video about celibacy a couple months ago, and I feel like maybe in a way there's like some connection here where people are actually being a lot more conservative, even though they identify as liberal and leftist or whatever. There are more conservative values that are kind of arising. Now, I don't think celibacy is a bad thing. I was actually quite pro-celibacy in that video, and I still stand by that. However, in general, it seems like Gen Z is really adopting the like grandma lifestyle, and I think that's really interesting. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do kind of have an issue with people demonizing others and again having this like self-righteous attitude about it. There's nothing wrong with abstaining, but there's also nothing wrong with indulging either. I'm calling it right now. Abstentation is the next big thing. Sobriety, celibacy, digital minimalism, dumb phones, religion. The age of hedonistic hyperconsumption is over. We're moving into a new and peaceful age marked by moderation and self-discipline. I can't wait. The idea that we live in a hedonistic world is one of the biggest myths of our time. American culture is surveilled, sterile, joyless, and uptight. Being addicted to the internet should not be mistaken for a lust for life. I really couldn't agree more, and I think that really kind of backs up what I was saying about club culture outside of America, because America has always had this very puritanical culture that still permits to this day, no matter how liberal and leftist the youths claim to be. Because in other countries, things like nudity are really not that big of a deal. Clubbing is something that people view as a means of having fun, not of like suffering and like having a panic attack, like a panic at the disco, if you will. People are a lot more like lax and open about clubbing, so it makes sense that American youths, I don't know why I keep saying that, the youths, I sound like Schmidt.
Youths! There are youths everywhere.
Before closing out this video, I wanted to briefly touch on the should cashiers say hello thing, because I think there is a major connection here with everything that I've mentioned about people just being really antisocial and not wanting to connect with people. I'm a little scared to talk about this because there was a lot of really heated discourse about this. So basically, a TikToker named Anika She made a video.
And here's my boomer complaint. Do cashiers not talk anymore? Like, it is so frustrating to me when I go into these stores, not even just cashiers, even people on the floor. When I go into these stores, restaurants, whatever it is, and now every restaurant and every store is so quirky and have their own set of rules. I walk in or I walk up to the register, I'm saying hi to you first. I don't know how nothing works in this store. Like, it's literally so frustrating. And it's like, I feel like every time I have a conversation with somebody who's working the register, they're treating me like I'm stupid, and I feel stupid because, hi, I've never been here before. Maybe if you explain to me what was going on or the deals, like, I don't understand. And then afterwards, because every store is so different and so unique and everything's so quirky, I feel like either they're not talking to you at all or they have 3 million questions. And it's like, before anybody, oh my God, so out of touch, I was a cashier lead. Like, I was on the front lines. People was throwing Bath and Body Works room sprays at my head. It's a tough job. I understand that everybody be hating their job. Damn. Can we explain something to people, please?
And a lot of people were like, oh, cashiers don't owe you kindness, or they don't owe you anything. They're just trying to do their jobs, whatever. And I totally get that perspective. I don't expect cashiers or service workers to do backflips and break out into song and dance and tell me their deepest, darkest secrets every time I walk into the establishment. However, I think it's perfectly reasonable to expect someone who works somewhere to help you with something, because it's like, in the job description. I used to work in retail, so quite literally it was required for us to greet customers when they walked into the door. That was just what we had to do. But that doesn't mean like, oh, engage in deep conversation and braid their hair. And I'm being dramatic when I'm saying this, but like just saying hello, being like, hey, welcome to insert store is like common practice. And honestly, it was actually kind of nice when I was met with a smile by a customer or just acknowledged, because it made me feel like seen as a human being and not just like a work robot, you know? And I don't know, I like being nice to people, but you know, I live in New York. People aren't doing the most to like be super hospitable, which is totally fine. And again, they don't owe me that. And I don't think that's what she was saying in the video, but the way people are so ready to jump on her and be so like intense was really interesting, because it just seems like we don't engage with each other anymore in real life, and we've gotten so used to engaging with each other purely online, we forget how to like act with people and treat people in public.
You want us to exist within a collectivist culture. You want us to band together, form communities and coalitions, to organize and to get shit done, to create unions, you name it. But greeting a customer at your job that has done nothing disrespectful to you is too much. And you don't think you should socialize with the people who literally frequent places where you spend most of your time? Okay, Diva, I don't know. I will hit the drawing board on that one.
Things that I've been spotting in the culture have now all coalesced into I shouldn't be forced to say hi to anyone at work because it is a violence. Saying hello to a customer when you are a cashier is not anti-capitalist praxis. Like, unfortunately, as a sociology major, I will tell you, we all exist under capitalism, unfortunately. So I think you cannot practice your like little revolution at the workplace. I worked full-time when I was an undergrad. I worked retail for 4 years, and people are going to say, well, I don't get paid enough, and I don't get paid enough to do emotional labor. And I will say, saying hello to someone is not emotional labor. And as someone who worked retail, I can tell you, you don't have to ask, how are you? You can say, hi, can I help you find anything? Or if you're a cashier, say, did you find everything okay? You don't need to engage in multiple streams of conversation if you ask them one question with like a yes or no answer. And I think social anxiety is valid, but I do not think it prevents you from having a normal conversation. As Queen Machiavelli said, you guys are creating hostile workplaces by not engaging in polite conversation. And it is not surprising to me that a lot of people do not have communities and do not have friends and are craving this connection with other people. But at the same time, I shouldn't have to speak to coworkers or customers. There is a very clear through line in this like internet-born hatred of other people that is very confusing to me.
Kindness is a great thing. Kindness is something I think we should all strive for as a human race, as fellow human beings on this earth. Like, life is hard. The least we can do is be kind to each other. And of course, if someone's being crazy to you, like you don't have to be like, peace and love, like I'm sending you love and light. Like, I'm not saying that, but I don't know, like being kind to each other builds community. We again complain about loneliness, but in order to combat that, we need to talk to each other. I don't want to come off as insensitive to service workers, because again, like I've worked in retail, I've been a sales associate, so I get It's tiring to engage with people all the time. I just feel like as Westerners, as Americans especially, we've gotten so comfortable with this hyper individualism that we forget what it means to have community and build community and how good that feels, because we need it. Like, community is one of the most basic needs that we have. Shall we whip out Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Like, it's really, it's like above like eating and sleeping, like, and shelter. So when we're feeling lonely and feeling depressed because of it, it's because a basic need is not being met. I totally hear people when they say like, late stage capitalism, I'm tired, I don't want to do, like, that is so real. But I don't think that's really what she meant. And attacking strangers online with vitriol and hatred also is like a weird thing that is normalized that I don't think is appropriate. Why can't we just have a conversation? Like, oh my God, not everyone is trying to like literally attack you. I'm scared already just talking about this, but I'm just gonna leave it at that. And I hope as a society we can heal, because it seems like there's just so much pain and anger buried beneath all of this disenfranchisement. Because it says a lot that if like all of us collectively are embracing things like bed rotting and like staying home and being introverted, like there's clearly something happening, something wrong. And I think a lot of that is like late stage capitalism, the state of the world, the lack of support we all feel but so desperately need. So it causes these kinds of backlashes and responses and normalizing of unhealthy behaviors, because we're trying to create comfort. Identifying with depression is, I think, a way of creating comfort for ourselves. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope this message reached you and was effective. I'm really not trying to offend anybody, but I think those who are willing and open to hearing what I have to say will receive it. And those who didn't want to in the first place, probably, and that's okay. Whatever. Peace and love. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, join the Patreon, patreon.com/MadisonBrown for exclusive content. See you in the next one. Bye.